Roger Marshall of the great state of Kansas. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Hey, Hugh, good morning. Glad to be on your show.
Now, you are a doctor. I want to establish that early on. So where did you do your medical school, doctor?
Well, I went to Kansas University Medical School, and I did my residency at South Florida in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Okay,
and
so
OBGYN residency.
And so did you practice for a long time before you got into politics?
I did. I practiced medicine for about 30 years, delivered 5,000 babies, and just the honor of a lifetime.
So what in the world possessed you to go into politics? You had a good career. You were a productive member of your community, honored and esteemed, and you went into the Senate.
Yeah. So, Hugh, the story went something like this. We lost our congressman. He got kicked off the House Agriculture Committee, and people started asking me to run. My wife told them consistently, hell no, he's not running. And we had our first grandson. This is at the end of Barack Obama's 8 years. And she looked at me and said, this country is really in bad shape. It's really broken. You like to fix things. It's time for you to go. So God opened a lot of doors, and here we are 6 years later, started off in the House and now the U.S. Senate.
Now, which committees are you on in the Senate, Senator Marshall?
Yeah, so the Agriculture Committee, which is very important to Kansas, of course. The Health Committee is health, education, labor, and labor pensions, something like that. And then an energy committee and small business. So really, I'm blessed. That represents probably 95% of the jobs in Kansas, and it's a great spot to be in.
And are you in the cycle? Are you in cycle 2022 election campaign for you?
No, we are not. We just got elected to the Senate a couple months ago.
Oh, good. So you got 6 years ahead of you. Okay, that's perfect. So we can lay off, and now we get to the issue which interests you right now. There are 3 vaccines out there. I have received the first dose of the Pfizer. I'll get my second dose in 10 days or so. I was very intrigued by the response you wrote to the Wall Street Journal. Would you lay out what the issue is and what your view on it is?
Well, you bet. I think a couple issues. My granddad used to say that figures lie and liars figure. And I've just been around medicine enough to see how people manipulate studies, interpret studies, to develop their policy up here, and it's very frustrating to me. I think Americans are much smarter if you really say, well, here's what we know, but the truth is we don't know what we don't know about this virus. So quit coming to the American public and saying, thus saith the Lord, this is the way it has to be. And the mask mandate's a great example of it. It's more politically driven than it is science driven, and America needs to know that. And the other big point I'm trying to make is that there's lots of studies now showing that just one shot of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine are 75, 80% effective, and then you could get that second shot up to 12 weeks later. So if you're trying to get herd immunity, I think that we try to vaccinate a bunch of people with one shot's probably the way to go. And that being said, I want to get the seniors both shots in them, and anybody with the truly high-risk medical problems, I want to get both shots with them and get that get their effectiveness up to 95% with that second shot. But if I could just bear with me, let me give you an example.
Please.
Yeah, let's say that you're in charge of your family and you have 200 vaccinations you can give, and there's 200 people in your family. If you gave 100 people 2 shots, maybe 95% of them would end up being effectively vaccinated. But if you gave everybody 1 shot with 75% effectiveness, 150 of those people would be vaccinated and protected, if that makes sense. So if you're
but let me ask you the question that follows that, Doctor. I call you doctor as opposed to senator because I think people need to know you know what you're talking about. If you had that, I loved your example of the 200 family members, 200 shots. Would you, in that 200 family members, find the oldest 10%? Say they're all over 80, and my grandpa lived to be 101, and you got people who are older and fragile, and then you've got babies. Would you give 2 shots to the older and fragile people and give none to the kids who are under 6 down to 0?
Well, certainly nobody under the age of 16 should be getting one yet. Okay. So that's a given. And then but what I like what you're doing is you know your family better than I do. I'm studying in Washington, D.C., and I'm trying to tell you what's best for your family. And I think that you would make a great, if I presented the facts to you and you're not a doctor, but I think you could quickly make that decision that, okay, we do have some high risk people. Let's as quick as we can get everybody one shot. And here we are 3 weeks later. Let's try to get that second shot in Grandpa or something like that. But I want to give you flexibility. I want to give local health departments, local doctors a little more flexibility to make the decisions that you're describing.
You know, Doc, I would agree. I have said from the beginning, if you simply tell the American people who ought to get the vaccine and then tell them where it is, they will line up according to the age group. But when you make it a stringent allocation of a scarce resource, everyone's going to lurch for it. That's why the lines are so big. But if you had explained that honestly, 80% of the morbidity are for people over the age of 75, that takes a lot of the pressure off. But no one has communicated that clearly.
It is such a challenge, and not to hammer President Biden's team, but they wanted to present this dark cloud so they could push through their $2 trillion. So they just wanted to tell you how bad the world was and how bad this virus was. But you're right. If we would, and I would have went to 65, just would have said, made this much simpler. You know, government makes the simple complicated. Leaders make the complicated simple. We have the capacity in this country to do 3 million flu vaccinations a day. If we saw this coming, all we had to do was back in November is to say we're going to get the vaccinations out to the people that already give them, the infrastructure that's already there, doctors' offices, pharmacists, county health departments, community health centers. Those people have the capacity to do 3 million vaccinations a day, and very simply say, anybody over the age of 65, call us, email us, whatever it is, and come by and get your vaccination. But they've made it so darn complicated. And we would have already been at this spot right now where 80% of the hospitalizations would have been stopped. And we're going in the right direction. We're going to get there, but it took twice as long if there was a little bit more common sense in play.
Quick anecdote for you, Senator. I'm staying in Orange County until I get my vaccination completed because I spent most of my adult life out here, and I'm living in Virginia now, but my healthcare providers are out here. And I came out, and there are 3 government websites and my hospital website, and I signed up for all of them because I turned 65 2 weeks ago. And, of course, the 3 government websites didn't work. The hospital one was out of it. And within 3 days of CVS getting their allocation, I got my first dose because they know how to do vaccines. I mean, it was nuts that we opened up new websites, new portals, because CVS knows how to handle medication distribution, as does Rite Aid, as does Walgreens. You know, you just said the essence. I don't know if that was a Trump mistake or a Biden mistake, but the idea that you would stand up new websites to do something that's already being done is dumb.
You got it. It is just that simple. To me, we had the existing infrastructure, and even just the distribution, we had to make that complicated. Whoever was distributing the flu vaccines, those are the same people that should have been distributing this. We made it complicated. A lot of people, grabbing for that money. There's money at each little step of this. People grabbing the money. So it's been frustrating.
Now, my brother, who's a PhD toxicologist, tells me that statistically, there's no difference between Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J. Take whichever one comes along. Don't worry about 1 shot, 2 shots. No one's a superhero. Just go get a vaccination. Do you think we will be around the corner and back to 90% of normal by May?
I do. I absolutely believe that we should be at herd immunity by April or May if our president's team does their job and our governors do their job. And I say this because we don't know how many people have had the virus already and are immune. Is it 80 million or is it 150 million people? I bet it's a lot more than we're given credit for. And I think we're setting what we vaccinated 90 million people already, and we should be able to get 90 more million people vaccinated in the next month, something like that, 100 million people. So that should get us to herd immunity. And really, really think the end of April, the 1st of May, we should have herd immunity.
And Senator Dr. Marshall, last question. It always bothers me when they say the United States leads the world in mortality. We actually lead the world in recorded death. I don't think a lot of the world can record death. Am I wrong or am I right?
I think you're absolutely right. And even in my home state, what I'm seeing them go back and do, and you've heard of ballot harvesting, they're going back and harvesting more COVID deaths. So somehow, some way, they're going back and grabbing people that died months ago and saying, "Oh, it was COVID." But you're right. We're doing so much more testing, all those things. So we're not comparing apples and apples with the rest of the world.
Keep coming back, Senator Marshall. Great to have a doctor on who's also a senator. I hope your colleagues listen to you on an increasingly frequent basis.